a mythological hunt, so to speak, but no one is all the stuff I've listened to. It's like, is it a myth? Is it legend? Or has it really happened? Because what it really is although a lot of the research I've done will give, and I'm just giving the viewers a little bit of context. It's kind of at a certain time, which is around about Halloween, it starts, where you have these ghost riders that pop out of the sky and literally have their death packs with them. And there's different gods. Odin is often one of the, well, Odin is named as the god that is really leading the hunt, but Odin has many different names. But the main one, and the one I think, and I know I discussed this with you, was really from the elves, the elven realm, Anel, called Anel. And the guy's name, or the leader's name, is Eridan Glass. So that would really be, he would be the leader of the wild hunt, which is also known as the Red Riders. And the, gosh, it's got a funny name. Sorry, let me just find this here. Rights of Warhog, I think that is probably the name. But basically, these guys come out, different packs, lots of females in there as well. And you guys can go and do the research. We'll post the link in there. And that come out at certain times at night. And legend and myth has it that they steal children. Wow. One of the things they do is they steal children. Now that's been kind of whispered in these videos and stuff that I've watched. No one is saying much about it, but that's in the whispering, that kids are actually taken on these wild hunts. Now, I know this is a very sensitive topic, so I want to just actually say to our viewers, this is a trigger warning, please. And we did say so in the advert as well, or just the promo. No kids. If you've got kids, please, out of the room. And yeah, so it is obviously very sensitive information, and it is a sensitive topic. But I do believe it is time that we speak about these things. So Caleb, I'm going to ask you to maybe speak to us about your experience of the wild hunt.
All right. Again, I've been hearing about this since I was a boy, and you're right, there is an awful lot of mythology that's out there about it. And depending on which Germanic society you are talking about, there are different names for everything. So, but it's all the same story, basically, just different players according to different traditions, just like you mentioned. I knew it from the Elven point of view, from the Norwegian, and I don't like to mention names like what you just did, because that kind of invokes stuff, and I don't like to do that if I don't have to. So we started to hear about it as early as the kindergarten stuff, that this is something that was going to go on. They taught us about something called the witching hour. I don't know if you know what that is.
Can explain.
Yeah. The witching hour is between midnight and 3 a.m. And again, it's a microcosm of the bigger celebrations where the veil gets thin. From midnight to 3 a.m. is when the veil is thin enough for the strong ones to come through. So, we learned about the witching hour. We started to learn about giants. We started to learn that these things are real. They're not just stories. And it was kind of a fear-based thing. So they were making us afraid of it, not in a respectfully like afraid, but afraid anyway. So this is kind of hard for me to talk about. So
I understand. Take your time.
We've been steeped in this mythological stuff for several years at this point, and kind of made terrified of it, I guess, if you want to say it that way. But anyway, they took us to what you could call a summer camp, but it wasn't really a summer camp. It was something that they put together for this purpose. And it was always with just gate kids. It wasn't the school in general or a church in general. We met at a Presbyterian church. Remember that later. And it was kids from all over the region, the state region where I was at. We went up into the mountains to a place called Castle Rock, because there's a huge rock that looks like a castle. Not very imaginative, but again, remember the mountains and what I told you about them before, about them being homes to different things, we didn't know that at the time. We didn't know that there was stuff that lives in caves and whatnot. We didn't know any of that. They took us up to this camp and they divided us into groups. Surprisingly, there was already kids there. By kids, I mean from about 5 on up to about 17 years old. By this time, I'm about 10. So kind of a huge jump in the time scale. But again, there was a lot of preparation for this kind of thing. They were evaluating us. They were trying to see what our gifts were. They were trying to see how strong we were. They were teaching us incantation. They were teaching us spellcraft. And we'll explain that as we go along here. But they were seeing where we were at. And this was like the ultimate test to see who was going to make it through whatever. If you know anything about the wild hunt, I'm sure most people don't, but what they do is they come out at night and it's not every night, it's only during certain times of the year. Beltane, Samhain, Yule. It goes through that part of the year, the coldest parts of the year, when they come out and they come through and they take souls, and they also kidnap not just kids, but adults too. They take them into the underworld, which people think the underworld is like hell or something. No, it's just the underground world. There's a whole world under our feet that most people don't even know about. And interestingly enough, this is kind of pushing way far ahead, but during my time seeing that, we encountered some of those people who were stuck there. Now, I'll explain that later. But anyway, for us kids, it was an interesting experience to be at this camp. It's like a summer camp. We're supposed to have fun. We're supposed to go canoeing, fishing, hiking, whatever. That didn't happen. We were separated by sex, not by age, just by sex. One big, like a longhouse, and another big longhouse with bunks in it. We were just supposed to wait to be told what to do. So that's what we did. They suddenly turned mean on us. By mean, they were shouting orders, and they were very unreasonable, just put it that way. And we had to fall in line or something bad would happen to us. And so they kind of paired us up strong with the weak, that kind of thing, And one group at a time, 2 at a time, we'd be led out into these woods. And no idea what was going to happen. It's dark, but there's a moon out, We're gifted kids, so we can see into the spirit. We can see things, right? And we started to hear like hooves pounding in the distance. We could hear dogs barking. I was not entirely clear on what was going to happen. Your instinct is to first see what it is if you can. The next one is to run. So it was a fear reaction for sure after that. And where do you run to in the dark and strange mountains? There's not too many places you can head to. And I was paired up with this girl, and we took off running. And you could hear things on the left and to the right of us, and you could kind of see them through the bush, through the trees. You're talking big, tall pine trees that are 100 feet tall in some places. They're thick forest. And there's a reason for the trees and all that. I'll talk about that too. But we ran. We couldn't run fast enough because we got caught. I can't fully explain what we got caught by, but it was pretty terrifying. Everybody wants to call it a Baphomet, but it's just something called a satire, SATYR, a satire. There's more than one of them. They came up out of the woods, almost seemed like they came up out of the ground. They grabbed us, and you don't have time to scream or to really react. You're not going to fight your way out of these things' hands because they're super strong, and they're magic users. They can cast stuff on you that will bind you and whatnot. Anyway, got a black hood thrown over my head, got my hands tied behind my back, and we were led someplace that I don't know where. I couldn't tell you where because I couldn't see it. Anyway, there was a big fire. There's these boxes on the ground, and boxes are about 2.5 feet high, not enough to sit up in, but about the size of I don't know, like a cedar chest, I guess, that you put blankets in or whatever. It was about that big, just enough room for 2 people. Me and this girl were put into this box, and it's metal, so it was freezing cold at night. It was hot during the day, and it was sealed shut, unbound. We were stripped naked, stuck in this box, and spent one whole day wondering what was going on, hollering and yelling. We could hear other kids hollering and yelling, and nobody came to say anything to us at first. On the second day, whatever ritual they're involved in, I could tell you what it is, but I really don't want to right now. But this is hard to relate to you. On the second day, the box opened, and a man stood over the top of us. He had a shaved head. He had a tattoo on one eye, his right eye. So his eye looked dark, but it wasn't. It was just a tattoo around his eye. And he handed a knife. He didn't hand it to us like gently. He threw it into the box, handed us a knife. It's about 10 inches long, super sharp knife. And he said, only one of you is coming out of here. You'd make the decision. Then he closed the box again. So how do you deal with something like that is what I'd ask everybody else first. And then how did I deal with it? Well, I didn't. I chose to just shut off and chose to try to ignore it as long as possible, because I knew what he was talking about up to this point. And I'd known about death for a while, what was going to happen. At some point, you were going to be called to give your life. That's what they've been telling me since I was a little boy. So anyway.
May I ask you how old you were at this stage?
10.
10?
Yeah.
And the girl?
She was 17.
Thank you.
So we spent the rest of that day and the next day just surviving. We didn't eat. There was no food, no water. It was either hot or cold. I mean, ridiculously hot or freezing cold, depending on what time of the day it was. You couldn't tell other than by temperature because you couldn't see out of this box. Couldn't see it. You could hear other kids banging. You could hear them screaming. It wasn't fun. Just put it that way. And she became like a mother to me in those few days. I didn't know her before. I never met her before. I don't even know where she's from, actually. But you get put with somebody in a position of stress like that, you get pretty close to them pretty fast. We call it a foxhole friendship. That's kind of what that was all about. I'm leaving out some things just because I don't want to talk about that, but you're laying there in your own filth. There's nowhere to pee, nowhere to poop. So you just do it right there because you have to, Can't get away from it. You're stuck in the stink and the wet and everything else. And she just started to talk to me. She started telling me that it's going to be okay. Sorry. Kept telling me it was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. And She just would hold me. She'd hold me like a mother. And sorry, that's hard to talk about.
Take your time. I think we can all relate to. Sure. Don't take a breath.
After the third day, they again said, there's only one of you coming out of there, or neither one of you is going to come out. And kind of brought back to that reality, and started losing track of time, because you don't really sleep in that situation. So she just, during that last day, she told me, don't let them take you. Keep something of yourself for you. Don't let them take you. And then she sang a song to me. So you are my sunshine song. I can't hear that song without breaking down. I can't tell the story without breaking down. But she sang that song to me, and I fell asleep in her arms finally. And I woke up to them opening the door, and she committed suicide sometime when I was asleep. So she took the decision out of my hands and just made it.
Wow.
One of the worst things I've ever experienced with any of this stuff. I was horrified. I was severely traumatized. I was covered in blood, feces, urine, everything that they wanted me to be covered in. And it was the point of that whole box experience was to perform your first sacrifice. Either you're going to be it or the other person's going to be it. And that's where you get imbued with some power. In other words, you get attached. You get, if you want to call them demons, I don't call them demons. They have different names, different species, different names. But they attach to you and they give you power in exchange for the sacrifice. So the unique thing about that was I didn't make the choice. She made it. She gave me a strong box in my heart. She climbed in it with me and locked the door behind her.
Wow.
Her name was Charlotta.